You can like if you didn't know, you might expect it to like be in a more modern library area,
Yeah,
and then
sure.
like go up the stairs like well, you know, like,
This is my first time being in the old
How many of you guys are using an AI companion with your classes?
What does that mean?
Like with Zoom, they let you can record, but then you can also have an AI tool summarize your class for you. No,
Yeah.
nobody. Okay.
I see like people at other colleges who are like, you don't even have to go to class, you just walk in and turn your camera on.
Yeah. Well, I have an opinion about this, which is mostly about privacy. Now, I've told you guys we're recording, but to record someone without telling them, right, or without telling your professor, I think that can be problematic. Any sort of recording. I worry a lot about the future with the meta glasses and people
like,
recording
like,
everything.
yeah.
It's a little scary, I think. Uh, yeah, I guess I've learned from like the past when you're in business. Well, frankly, when you're doing anything like your private conversations, there's like I value them being private. You process a lot in private. Anyway, uh, uh, one. Oh, can you pass me Doug Wang over there anywhere?
Yeah.
Pass that over back to me.
Here.
There's no drop ad in winter study, but there is ad drop. Like you can actually, they can publicize it. But
You can sign something about
what people like after the first class, many people like had something else they were interested in, and for some reason, some student, I should, this is like, anyway, some students will give you any ideas. I hope you're enjoying the class so far. Well, if you are not, I've had students who find another class has room for them, and so they come to me and they say, "Can I drop your class?"
So you get.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And you think I'm gonna, tell somebody, no, you have to,
And
you have to stick around. Right,
you have to be here.
right.
Sundays.
I am a planner, and so being in here just 10 minutes before class is not suit my planning gene.
Have you looked to see if you can maybe?
Well, I talked with them about that, and we just talked, and she has two classrooms apparently, so she might leave our classroom a little earlier.
Do it. That's like you see that boss. I'm not nice in here because I don't like these. It's too specific. I just didn't want to take that.
I did my first year, I made everyone sit in the same seat, like every class. Although by the end of the class, they'd given me the feedback they wanted to, can we please, like I asked the nice, can we please sit elsewhere? But I might mix you guys up at some point during good to get to know everyone in the class. That's one of the things I realized I didn't really understand was that like you all don't know each other. Like I put you all in the student bucket and uh okay. We'll get started. Who are we missing here? Michael. No, there's Michael. So then I guess for everybody, 6, 12, 14. So I'm missing one person. Oh, Santiago. Okay. So we're going to start with another exercise here, talking to each other exercise. So if you what I want you to do, we're gonna go two, 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 two. And I want you to, maybe we can try to talk a little quieter. We'll see if we can keep the noise down. So I want you to talk to each other about two things. Um, uh, do you have a map origin story? Like, is there something in your life, maybe it was getting lost, that got you interested in maps? And if you don't have one, that's fine. And then the second thing is, what maps are you interested in? Or what, like, when I started collecting maps, people said to me, you need to have a focus because there's just so much out there. I mean, there's very few people who can be like David Rumsey and just acquire like anything and everything. So that's the second thing. And the hitch in all this is what I would like you to do when we're done will take, well, hopefully only 2 or 3 minutes for you to talk to each other. I want each person to take a note down about what the other person said, because you're going to tell the group what the other person said. Got it? So
Two things. Our map, it's our map origin story.
yes, exactly.
Sorry.
But now you
Yeah, my dad, when I was young, I had a basement where we played a lot. I had to read about sport with my friends.
So I'll give
It was, a big spot.
All right.
And my mom, we had a US and a football. Now, I was, too, was neat. Here's that US goal. And I really, kind of picked this up. So my friend and I would say, I was going to aim for US Washington. That really got me about this. I started winning the state. Yeah, now I like specifically, I think a lot of YouTube trying to see like in that more ideal situations and like some of the I'm not very well with that, but we're in, Officer, I was calling out. And then when they I voted those things, and so I recommend the even how it's like how if you're interested, but yeah, I'm really definitely that's nice. If you had a favorite both very good. It's like you're teaching that habit to learn. I'm gonna have to go to social ways that
it's good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's wrap it up, guys.
That is.
Ready? You guys good? All right, you guys, can we
Like that's
wrap it up? Okay. Awesome. Let's go quickly around the room. I'm hoping, 30 seconds or thereabouts. Let's try to keep it brief. That is one of the talents in the working world that you will hopefully acquire, which is the ability to be succinct, but still informative. So there you go. Hey, I think we got one there or there for you. All right. Actually, we'll go in reverse this time. You want to start and tell us about Josh?
I started having interesting maps after family backpacking in Minnesota, where he actually used maps. And he likes
Political maps. Okay.
G1 started being interested in maps after summer before AP World. She had to do like some summer work with maps. She kind of went further and did looked at some world maps. And she's interested in world maps and also like fantasy maps and
Fantasy maps.
yeah.
Cool. Okay. Dylan?
Okay. Leighton, that's how you pronounce it? Okay. Leighton's origin story. His family actually has this amazing practice. I think it's super cool. Whenever they visit a country, they'll try to purchase a map of that country, usually pre-1900s. They try. If they can, they'll purchase it within that country, or they'll purchase it after the fact. There's a map dealer in London. Also, he likes hiking and climbing, and this has instilled a appreciation for navigation and especially more modern satellite imaging and GPS and so on. In terms of his focus, he's interested in sort of older maps that tend to be perhaps inaccurate from a strictly to scale geographic perspective, but are still interesting despite those. And he's also interested in more modern, very accurate topographic maps.
Okay, great.
Dylan's origin story is that he's a history major and he's interested in humanities, and he thinks maps are a really good way of visualizing things and displaying information about people. And then his focus would be more accurate representations of geography, because they can look really nice, but they also can show why things happen and can help explain why things happen.
So two things, the West Wing, if you Google West Wing, there's a great 4-minute segment about them being educated about the problems with the Mercator map and and another projection, Gall Peters, I think.
Yeah.
That's more
A crazy distortion.
Yeah. And then on mistakes with maps, I have a whole presentation about just that. It's on Pixium. If you search mistakes on Pixium, you'll find it. All right, Raphael.
Sayer's origin story with maps was that when he was little, he would just draw a map of his house, of his neighbor's house, the interior, right? That's all I understood. So that's what started his interest in maps, and more specifically, he likes political maps, the electoral maps, geological surveys, colonial expeditions, surveying the land, and metro transportation.
Transportation.
Yeah.
Okay. Subway maps.
Yeah.
Okay. Go.
Yeah. Raphael, that's origin story was just kind of in elementary school, looking through history, through history textbooks and finding the map sections and being really related to the various different historical maps. And the types of maps would be that kind of historical maps.
Historical maps. Any particular time period?
The colonial period.
So 18th century.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Alicia.
So she comes across a lot. She's especially interested in European history, so she has want to know how the cities are living and the political between the European countries.
Okay.
Really likes astronomy, so astronomy maps
Oof.
stars, and she also likes subway maps. She just told me that Shanghai High has 26 lines, 21 lines. And yeah, so many maps, and I guess that's it.
So there's a section we'll talk about design in maps, and the London Tube map is a really famous example of that. I'm fascinated by what happens in the brain when we see something, and that map actually is a great example of something that's been hard to quantify, like why it's a better map. Talk about it. So we'll talk about that. And then the other thing I'll mention is Steve Karseski is a brain surgeon and neurologist, and he is our last speaker on the last Wednesday, and he unpacks this question of how our brain works when it sees images, and also the mapping of the brain. Okay. Yeah, Michael for Travis.
So Travis's interest in maps has a lot to do with Google Earth and specifically like nature and the connections between like the coast where Travis lives in Virginia Beach and like forested areas and green areas further inland. And he has this interest in looking around on Google Earth and zooming in and finding interesting places along the coast in like the green areas around where he lives, and exploring that way.
Cool. So Ben Grant founded a website called Overview. Anybody heard of this? He's got a couple million followers, and he was early into taking satellite maps and doing montages and just sharing things with satellite map imagery. You'll like that. Okay.
Michael, his map interest kind of stemmed from a map in his kitchen, a world map, which his grandfather would call him over and kind of quiz him on different countries, and also like give him short, brief history lessons on those countries.
Yeah.
Then in high school, he started playing a game called Cetera with his friend, which is kind of a GeoGuessr kind of game, and like pointing out and you're quizzed on countries or cities or states or rivers or geographic features. And yeah, he just kind of really found a connection with that, especially because by being able to understand the maps of where people are from, you're able to make connections with them and kind of understand them more.
Yeah. Cool. Great.
Yeah. So Dalton, when he was a kid, had this big world atlas, and would just look through that, look through it a lot. That's kind of where his love for maps started. And nowadays he more focuses on like old maps of places that he can go. Whether that's like Pittsfield or like if you went to Rome, he'd like to look at an old map of the place and try and find out how it's changed and where he is.
Great. Okay.
Noah has a really cool origin story. Noah was in a program where he was in the woods, basically in the mountains. And for one of the activities during the program, Noah had to track his way with a compass and a map. And that's where his love of maps stemmed from. Noah's favorite types of maps are old territorial maps, kind of similar to me, so you can see what's changed.
Okay. There's a whole section on Pixium, and it's maps from the Library of Congress. In the 19th century, oblique bird's eye view maps were a big thing, and if you were a city like of almost any size to be known, you made one of these maps. So they're great, and a lot of students, yeah.
Like the Sanborn fire maps.
Different from that. Those we have some of those on Pixium. Those are straight down. I think they call it cadastral. Does anybody know the meaning of that word? Cadastral. I think cadastral means like plot line kind of thing. Oblique bird's eye view is like what it sounds. It's sort of looking in from the sky. And while there was no ability to be in the sky in the 19th century, they still made these maps and they're beautiful. And so there's maps of virtually all of your hometowns, I'm guessing, if they're in the United States, will be on one of these maps. There's also, and we will look at this, it's one of the most important maps. Braun and Hogenberg this is now 16th century, did the same thing for cities. They're really cool. Okay, Michael.
So Matthew's interest in maps started when he was a kid. He said in his basement he had a big US map and a world map. And when he and his friends would play soccer in the basement, they would try to kick penalty kicks and they would aim for specific things.
Yes.
So
That's a big map.
Top left corner, bottom right corner. And he said he remembered aiming for Washington State to try to get top left corner when he was kicking penalty kicks. Then his favorite type of map or interest in maps now is related to transportation in cities and looking at how we can create more effective urban transit and using maps to do so.
Cool. So Blake Martin is a classmate who works for Weston and Sampson. They're a geology consulting firm, and they've done maps of Boston to predict the rise in sea level because of epic rains. They've also done things about parking and parking spaces. It's all geoanalytics. And he's speaking on 2 weeks from tomorrow.
All right, so Michael's origin story is that from a young age, he went to London with his family, and they were traveling, in the London Underground on the tube.
Yeah.
And his mom said, "It's on you to guide us." So
Nice.
he had to kind of memorize the map and help the family navigate around on their vacation. And now he's very into airplanes and airports and how airports are laid out and kind of the functionality of like whether or not they're effective or not in how they're made.
Cool. We had a pilot the first year who did some aeronautical maps, Harry Letterman.
Yeah.
So there's some nautical maps on Pixie. I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, mix. So I would be repeating what you would tell me, so I'm going to just let you tell us very quickly. Why don't you just tell us what you're interested in, what kind of maps you're interested in?
Yeah, I guess I chose this class because I'm interested in maps as art, like visual art. I care a lot about like visual representation, and like I said yesterday, like different ways of seeing the world. Like I think that's a lot of what like art is to me. Like here's what if you could see this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't see why maps are any different than that. So
So I just got an email yesterday from a guy named PJ Mode. And if you Google him, he went to Cornell, like David Rumsey, acquired a boatload of map, but his interest was persuasive maps. So he has and maps. So this guy George Box has this quote: all maps, all models are wrong, but some are useful, I think is what he said. You guys heard this before?
Yeah.
And the same is true of maps. Every map is wrong, but they have different uses. And what I would just reflect on regarding maps and this idea of lenses is that the map makers are very often, almost always, trying to like they're aware that they have those lenses, and sometimes they're putting the lens on to persuade you about something. And it can be for any intent, right? I mean, it can be a noble intent, it can be an ignoble intent. They know that our brain responds more effectively to an image, a beautiful image. I mean, colors matter a lot. So I think you'll get to unpack that by looking at a lot of maps. Okay, great. That was fun. Let's jump. We're going to jump. Anybody have any questions about anything here? Okay, well, let me tell you what we're going to try to do in the next 55 minutes. We'll talk briefly about the field trip. We'll talk about the projects, the sources, and then we're going to talk about being a critical consumer of cartography. I'm going to go over the basic rubric that we use for that. Then we're going to come back to Pixiem. I know we dabbled into Pixiem, but we didn't really spend enough time. And that's where we're going to spend more time today is we're going to finish off that early map exercise. And then we're going to try to basically do the same thing again on Renaissance maps. Mapping really took off, if you will, in the late 15th, and 14th centuries. Part of the course also is going to be not just Eurocentric maps, but Asian maps and Islamic maps. I have some opinions about, I mean, they're beautiful, they're wonderful. It's a completely separate lens. And we're going to look at those. We have separate most important map pages for each one of those. I don't have one for indigenous maps, but we will look at some. So field trip. Hold on just a second. Let me get to my notes on this. Okay. So Tekla, are you still in? Okay. Sayer? Josh, you're in. Okay. Travis, Jiwan. Okay. Dalton, you're in. Noah in. Michael in. Who is not? Who said they were not?
I don't think I'm gonna be.
You want to go?
I don't think I. Oh, I said who's not. Sorry.
No, no, no. Who is in? Who wants to go? Okay. Who said to me this morning? Oh, you said to me this morning. Okay. Okay, hold on. So Ping and Raphael. Okay. Holy smokes. Last year we had three. This year we have what do we, and Tim's a buddy of mine, classmate, my juggling partner. So we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. For those of you who have a car, if you can be thinking about whether you might be able to drive and I'll pay for your gas and expenses, that would be great because we're a little short for, might you guys? And you take 4?
Yeah.
5?
I have 5 seats, but one of them is for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that would be that. And we can talk, if anybody else has a car, we can talk about that more. But I got a van for 7. I thought that was going to be a good thing, but but now turns out we need more. So it's great. It'll be really fun. For those of you who are going, we're going to the New York Public Library, and there's 7 maps that we're going to see there, and 5 of them are in this book about Manhattan and maps. All the maps we're going to see at the New York Public Library are about Manhattan. So anyway, it'll be fun. Okay, did that. All right, so I'm going to start with this. So actually, what I'm really going to start with. So the school asked, we're doing the glimpse talks. You're welcome to come to this on Tuesday at 4:00, this upcoming Tuesday. 11 winter study instructors are going to talk about what they're teaching for 6 minutes each. So like rapid fire. And I'm talking about this class. And so I talk about the origin story of the class. I talk about my camping adventure, which you can see right here. I had AI make these images for me about being in the rain and lost, blah, blah, blah. And then I talk about making maps for my work, and then discovering old maps. This is actually our speaker today. It's Daniel Crouch in the middle. That's my wife on the right. But look, the premise of the class is that old maps can teach us about new maps. That's it. Like, study these old maps. There's a lot of lessons in them. And when you go out into the world and you're making maps or you're consuming maps, you can use the ways that you've thought about these old maps for new maps. Okay, so that's the headline. Now let's unpack that a little bit more. This is evolved, but this is the very simple rubric about thinking about a map. So this is to guide you with you got to start with whatever you're interested in or you force yourself to be interested in, and then you push, that's the love part. And then you push yourself into, okay, well, what questions am I going to ask about this? How am I going to understand this rock? And so there's 4 questions, right? Who made it? Who was the cartographer, the creator? Who paid for it? Because that's not always the same, right? Who had the money behind this to make sure that it happened? Who was their target audience, right? And now what question were they trying to address? Because almost every map has a question that it's addressing. I'm taking the subway. How do I get from stop A to B, right? And I don't really care about how geographically accurate that map is. That's one of the things that happened in London in that new map was they abandoned geographic accuracy for the question that you really cared about. How do I get to the next stop? Okay, what logic is employed in making the map? So this is a fundamental problem that two-dimensional maps will never really solve, which is projection. How do you take a three-dimensional thing and put it into 2 dimensions? And I call that the logic. How did you get the data for the map? That's the system of collecting the data for that particular map. And so if you go back to Renaissance or early Renaissance maps, the sea captains, sailing all over, they come back to Amsterdam or London and they tell them what they saw. I went this far, or explorers who went to the North Pole. There's a whole who was mistakes on maps. That was you. There's a whole fake islands for financiers thing. So when people were going to the Arctic, they would get sponsors for their trip, and they would fake an island and name it after their financier so that that they get more money. And it wasn't until hundreds of years later that they found out these things don't exist, but they lived on maps for a long time. We're going to look at a map made by a team. One of them was a woman who's very famous, Marie Tharp, who sounding data from the ocean. This is the first map of the ocean floor. It was a seminal map in the 1970s. And how did they get that? They had this technology to look at the bottom of the ocean floor in some systematic way. Okay, so estimation, I separate that out because so often there's speculation on maps, and understanding this line between estimation and speculation, that like the map maker, you will see, we'll do this. We'll go look at maps where there's this blatant speculation. And that's like every map will have some form of estimation on it. And you want to be mindful of when that line has been crossed. Right, the design, the look and function, we talked about that, and then iteration. So a lot of old maps have states. This is, whatever, 18th century and before. They would make it, then they would make it again, and then again. There's a map of Malta. So who are my history people? Okay, so Malta was under siege from the Ottomans in 1563 or something. I was there a year and a half ago. The Maltese are interesting. Like they talk about it like it was yesterday, the siege. And there are these maps. There's 4 states to this map about the siege of Malta that happened over something like 6 months. And they actually show the Ottomans, they've got the upper hand, and then the next map, like the battles, a lot closer. And then by the end, the forces of Christendom had pushed the Ottomans back. And map geeks go way deep on states of maps. There's maps of New York, a lot of them that have states. There's a map of New England where Philadelphia is first not on it, and then it's on it. So that's all fun stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go into this a little bit more. Any questions about this? I was more of a stickler about this before, but really, like, use this however you want. Like, don't feel like when you're presenting your map, you have to go through this whole litany, but it's a tool for you to uh, wrap your head around what's going on in a map. So I'm going to take a couple maps and like apply it, a couple more. So this is, anybody want to tell me what this is? It's a very famous North American city. Yeah.
Wait, no. Oh, I saw something that looked like San Francisco. But
It is San Francisco.
it is, wow.
Yeah. So what's the orientation?
The orientation.
Where's north?
North is left.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And this hold on, let's jump into Pixium here. So there's Alcatraz. Sorry, that's Angel Island. J is Alcatraz. It's got a little key here. Island of Alcatrazes. This was made by a French sea captain when he went through the Bay Area in the late 19th century. So, like, what's been discovered, right? It's horribly inaccurate, right? That's the fun of it. How did they orient this? Well, they did it. The orientation was as if you're going into the bay. How did they do it? I'm pretty sure they just had sightings and a compass and not much else. But this is a knowledgeable person of their time, but they only had a limited amount of time, so they had to really estimate. And it was a one and done kind of map. My friend Jim Shine, a map dealer, calls it the map of the 7 rabbits because he sees 7 rabbits in it. Like there's a rabbit's foot there, and there's a rabbit there. There's a rabbit there.
But aligned, do you mean that north is left?
North is left.
That's what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Align with the way that you had. Yeah.
So a lot of the maps that we've seen, especially the older ones, they'll have kind of a point of convergence for all these different lines.
Yeah.
Like here, there's one, and one that you showed us yesterday, there were several.
Yes.
What do those mean, the convergence points?
In some cases, it's a relic to Portland maps, and we're going to talk about those maybe tomorrow. So a Portland map is a map that has lots of lines on it, and I can't tell you exactly how this works, but if you take where you are and a compass and you line it up, like if you know I am if I know I'm here and I want to go here, right? This line is there's a bearing for this line, a compass bearing, and so then you can sight yourself and go in the direction you want.
I see.
But in many cases, the lines after the 16th century, it was just more. It might have been done for the map maker. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So you're asking me, like, what's the purpose of those lines?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, he might have used it to make the map.
I see.
Rather than, but he could have also used it. I mean, he's got, hold on. He's got, let's look closely at this. I'm pretty sure that's north. If it is, it seems a little off, right? It seems to me like north is more due left when I think about, but it might be. I mean, that may have been where he thought north was.
Okay.
Right. He thought it would. I think north is this way when I mean, and like in terms of the positioning of making the map, but it looks to me like he's saying north is actually here.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to jump for a second here because you're sort of like one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to talk about technology, map making technology. Where is mine? Yeah. So like what this is I built this because I wanted to make sense out of the the technologies, both printing technologies, but as well as like compass and right. When were these things discovered? You to understand. So the compass was definitely known like 1000 AD by the Chinese. Now, when was it actually? It wasn't long. That traveled pretty fast after that. So they definitely had a compass, right? We would know that. Latitude and longitude. Did anybody know the story of latitude? Do you want to tell us what the story is about latitude? Like when was latitude known and when was longitude known?
Well, the latitude was known long time ago, but the story I know is on longitude because there wasn't a way to do it, so they had I think there was a society in Britain or maybe the British government, I'm not sure, that commissioned a competition and like inventors to say, like, okay, well, whoever can like figure out a device to measure longitude will get them, a lot of money, some big cash prize. And I believe it was a clock
That's right.
that they used to measure longitude.
Okay, so and who can explain? Anybody else want to explain why? So latitude was known. I think you can go back to 1000 BC and it was known. Who can explain why? And why is latitude known? Because the sun the day of the year, like it was known the days of the year and the earth where you are. And so if you measure at noon at the high point where you are with an angle, right? And you know what's happened in the years prior, like you can tell where you are on the north-south axis. That's latitude. But why is longitude a hard problem? Anybody want to speculate on that? What's the problem with longitude?
Sorry. So they calculate latitude just by like seeing where the sun sets?
Where the sun is at the high point, at the high point in the day. That's how you get latitude.
How do you measure where the sun is at that?
Well, if it's cloudy, you can't. But if it's not, then you have an octant or a sextant or a quadrant. These are these devices that, and we're going to look at these. But you have a device, and then you just do that. I mean, you know you know where the land is and where you think level is, right? And so you measure it against level, and you can see what angle in the sky the sun is at.
Because you just need one axis. Right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. That's latitude. Latitude is north-south. Okay. Yeah.
Well, longitude is just kind of made up. Like it's just kind of thrown in there just for coordinate sake, really, right? Like anything could have been zero.
Yes.
Longitude, but instead they put it through. I don't know exactly what city, but
anybody?
Greenwich.
Anybody been there? Yeah. Okay. But did you have something else? So you're absolutely right. Latitude can be anything. And there was actually a fight between the US and Britain and France in the late 1800s because all these maps had been developed in all these countries and they had their own. So latitude had been known since like the early sometime in the 1600s. So then countries go about their business to make maps and they have to make a map, you have to have the longitude. And anyway, it got resolved. Britain won. But if you go to Paris, you can see what one were you
like at the time clearly.
Okay. Did you have a question? I thought. So again, latitude is not known until sometime in the 1600s, and it was the French who did this thing. It was land-based longitude, and if you measure the moons of Jupiter, like there's a lot of star thing, and I can't tell you any more than that, but they figured it out. and it was very complicated and hard to do, and it was only good for particular locations. So there was a lot of math that still had to be done. Yeah.
Why does it have 2 points on the timer? For longitude?
Good question. So that's because it was discovered by the French sometime in the 1600s.
Mhm.
And the latitude at sea, well, latitude not only at sea but on land, but sort of they were looking for the contest was about Davis Sobel, a book called Longitude. The contest was latitude at sea, but it really meant latitude easier than this complicated math. And so it has two lines because that discovery didn't happen until like 100 years later. And it only happened because the guy made a clock that was so good that you could know within, and they set the terms of it. So if you're out at sea and you know what time it is in London and you know what time it is where you are and you know the angle of the sun, it's noon, right? It's noon and I'm in the Pacific somewhere and my clock says, let's see if we can do this. So it's noon in the Pacific, and my clock says, my clock says noon. Okay. So, and let's say it's San Francisco. And London is 9 hours ahead of San Francisco. So that means it's 9 p.m. in London, right? That means 9 hours out of 24. So you're 9/24ths of the way of the, if you divide, let's make it easy, 8 hours. So now you're 1/3 of the way around the world from London. That means you're how many degrees longitude? If you're 1/3 of the way around the world, and London's 0, and you're 1/3, what's the longitude wherever you are? It's 8 hours difference, and you know that, right? Your clock says noon, and you know it's accurate. Therefore, you know it's 8 p.m. in London because it's always later, right? So that's 8 out of 24 hours of the spin. Okay, so now my question to you is, what longitude has how many degrees? Let's ask that first. 360, right? 360. So, okay, so if you're halfway around the world, what are you? What's your 180? So if you're 8 hours away, you're 120. Exactly. Does everybody get that? Like now you actually know because you do the time, you know exactly where you are.
Were those like some of the origins of like time zones? Or
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Does the tilt in the earth mess with that at all?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. But that's one that I still have to wrap my brain around. You know, the earth tilts and then tilts, right? Yeah.
I'm wondering how there's like, why is there many latitudes? Are we talking about latitude or longitude? Sorry, first of all.
So somebody once said to me, latitude is fatitude. Like
Okay, yeah. So latitude is hard.
No, latitude is the easy one.
Okay,
North south. Latitude is
okay.
north south. East west is the hard one because we're spinning.
That's longitude.
Yeah.
I bet that's fatter because it's horizontal.
Longitude is the long. I don't know. It's not the circular lines. It's the long lines. They're all the same.
Oh, right, because the lines. Yeah. Okay, I get you.
Okay.
Like, but as my question is, how is there any like, why is it up to interpretation? What were you saying earlier that there's many different measures?
Anybody want to try that? Answer that question? Yeah.
Well, you have to set where 0 is. It's like there's not like the equator. For latitude, there's the equator, which just like kind of objectively is 0 because of like the way the poles are. For longitude, you have to say, okay, where is the middle of the world on east-west spectrum? So like, you know, the British said, okay, we're gonna have that 0 be
The Earth
straight
spins.
down through London. The French said, oh, we're gonna have that straight down through
Paris.
down North America.
Paris.
So
I think it was DC.
DC, yeah.
Yeah.
That's you have to start with 0.
And it's Britain. Like,
It ended up being Britain. Yeah. Yeah. Look, these are like think about these things because there's all sorts of math, right, that we now sort of assume, right, to be true, but you got to work through in your head how this all happened, and then you'll see relics of this in all the maps that we look at. Okay. I'm gonna keep going. But look, that's a really good discussion. Uh, Williamstown, this is a map of Williamstown. It's all about like who owns these maps. You're gonna see a map like this. Bummer. Hold on. It's on Pixium. But this is a map of parcels in Williamstown from the late 1800s. It's really cool. And I think you'll see this when we go to next a week from today. There's a site called Landglide that I have that tells you who owns every piece of property. If you guys want, you can tell me, uh, I can look it up on my phone. It's really cool. These are strip maps. We looked at one yesterday. The question is pretty simple, like how do I get from here to there? But the logic is really interesting, right? They're showing strips. So, right, you go up one, and then the top of one is the bottom of the other. It's your route map. This is one of my favorite examples of speculation. See, it says supposed open sea. Like this, believe it or not, this is like the mid to late 1800s, and they still didn't know what was at the North Pole. There was still some debate. And an American exploration went to the Arctic. There's a great book. Hampton Sides was a speaker of one of our classes about this expedition to the Arctic to try to get to the open polar sea, and a third of them died. Yeah.
So the red part is the stuff that is not yet sailed.
No, the red part is to get your attention. No, the red part is the ocean, and I don't know why some are redder than others. I think there might have been a current thing. Like they were supposing that there was this Kirosiwa, like the Gulf Stream here, right? That they figured, hey, if there's a Gulf Stream here and it's so strong, there's going to be something over here. And like, I mean, think about again, your lens on the map. This to me is one of the most blatant speculations on a map that we'll see, because they had a story to tell, and there's not a lot of data that says that, I don't think they had data to say that the Gulf Stream is that strong here and it's not at all strong over here, right? But they made it blue and red because they wanted to tell you a story.
Blue is weak.
Blue is weak, yeah. Yeah. Blue is ice, actually. They say it, ice. These are the states of maps. This is that example I told you about. Here's Philadelphia on the map, and here's an earlier version of it where Philadelphia doesn't exist, or didn't make the map. I mentioned the echo sounding. So this is the one that Marie Tharp made in the 1970s. The tube map we talked about. Okay, we're going to run out of time once again. Let me keep moving. All right, we're going to do 10 minutes about the projects, and then I want to get back to our other project from yesterday, playing around with Pixium. So you guys have two projects. One is to find an old map, and you can do whatever you want. Pre-1940, yeah.
Why 1946?
Yeah, I think that was, good question. There was a lot of mapping done I'm not going to give you a good answer. Technology kind of multiplied after the Second World War. There was a lot of interesting things that happened in the Second World War, but hey, it's not a hard and fast thing. Okay, so you're going to find a map. I'm going to talk to you about, actually, let's just go talk about sources right now. So I have a list for you to work from. And I put in green the map, the sources that I thought, you might start with. There's a lot here. Anyway, I would encourage you. David Rumsey is awesome. Library of Congress. At some point, I'll show you how on David Rumsey to get the highest resolution that you can. I do want you to get the highest resolution you can because that way we can enjoy it more when we share it, when we look at it here. But all these sites let you download maps. So your task is to find a map, put it on Pixium, and build an exhibit story about that map. And let me just show you an example of that so you can sort of see the end of the road. So let's go to last year. Here's a student project. So this is what was done last year in the class, and you guys are, you have access to this if you want to check it out. Okay, who's this? Jake. This is a lot. So Jake, and they should be only 2 or 3 minutes. So you can put dots on maps and you can put, and I want you to, so I want the way you build a story is by putting dots on the things that are of interest to you. And then you annotate it with some information, including a voice note, and then you string them together into a story. So, well, let's see what happens here.
This British map, published in 1861, is, in my opinion, designed to give an unfamiliar public an overview of land upon which the Civil War is said to take place. The map is a north-facing bird's-eye view of the South, and the underlying data is taken from public ordnance surveys, but it is clear that some geographic liberties have been taken, such as the distortion of Florida to fit into the map's confines.
So there's every step has two, an A down here has an A and a B step. The B step zooms in to wherever you set it. So, I'll show you how to do that. What's most important is that you think about,
The American South, outside of the Civil War, is made clear by its caption. States where slavery was legal are denoted by the S symbol.
Yeah.
When we're giving our presentation, this voice
You're gonna
section
turn it
format is
off.
for you, right?
Yeah.
Right, we'll actually be
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. You'll turn off the sound. Yep. Everybody get the end zone here? Okay. So let's go back then to find your map, put it on Pixium, curate your map, right? Meaning, go whatever you want to talk about. It's totally up to you. And then turn off the sound and present your map in class. And I'm encouraging you to make them be only 2 or 3 minutes. And by the way, like this is true in life, in any like being succinct is harder than like telling you you've got 2 or 3 minutes. It's harder than 10. It's just harder. But that's what I want you to do. And I also want you to I do want you to curate, like I want to know your sources on your map. So let's see if he did it here. And probably not. So sources will go. So in each dot, or at least one of them, you should put links into where this map came from. Because I'm going to want to, like, I want to know. That's part of being a good curator is, leaving breadcrumbs to the people who come after you about what to, how to verify. I can tell this is a David Rumsey map. Let me show you a couple of other tools here on Pixium. So one is this thing here, Google search. So this works after your thing has been uploaded. But anyway, you can go to Google search and it'll take a thumbnail and it'll look at it for you. And it's really cool. Like any map that's on Pixium, you can have an AI tool tell you about it. Okay, so now let me show you some of the elements of Pixium. Let's go back to Chris's map, just a second. Okay. Oops. So as far as elements of Pixium, these are pretty self-explanatory. I didn't show you this one, but you can do this. If you zoomed in, you can get back out to the, you can also go full screen or not. If you want to take a screenshot without, you can just, everything should work on your phone as well as it works on your laptop. If it doesn't, if anything doesn't work, I want to know because this is something that a team of us have developed. And then over here, these are the sort of the critical buttons. So this is the image text. This is about the image as a whole. And to edit this, you don't have to fill out this for your presentation, but you can. And then you can edit it right from there. There's a title, and then there's a description page. Let me know if you have questions. Okay, so that's called the image text. Then there are your dots, and that's where your presentation is going to be made. So to make a dot on any map, you just enter some content. I'm going to say test, press this green button, and put it wherever you want. And you can move it, right? And then you hit submit. Okay, and now we've got a dot. And now let's say and what I would recommend, by the way, for your presentations, I would say I would write out what you're going to say for each map or for each dot, sorry. This is the 10th dot on this map. Okay, and so I'm going to save it, and now it's there. But now I want to add my voice note to it, and so you come in here. I've already done this, so then I go. This is the 10th map. Sorry, the 10th dot on this map. You can see it down there, and hit stop. And now it's in. You got to click update. I think I'm going to keep going because you can test this out tonight, later, and then you can ask me questions. To actually work on your exhibit story. Oh, I know why I couldn't find that other one. So all our exhibit stories are going to live up here. This box here is called the exhibit text. And all the stories that you guys have, you need to put your name in there so we can tell whose is whose. So just put your name in there, and that's it. Okay, so to edit any of yours, to edit your story. So if we want to edit Chris's story, that's the one that we just looked at. You click on this button, and here's his story. There's 9 dots in it, and you may recall I added the 10th dot to it. So if you click minimize here, and I go down, let's find that 10th dot. Okay, so I got to refresh the whole thing to get it available to go on to the map. So I'm going to actually follow through on this. So give me a second. I'm going to refresh the whole exhibit. I'm going to go into Chris's exhibit story. Sorry, I'm going to go into edit down at the bottom, edit. Here's Chris's story. I'm going to minimize, and now I'm going to go down to the bottom. There it is. Add to exhibit story. So I'm going to add that thing in. And let's just say we want to, we want to really zoom in on that guy. So now I'm going to set the zoom like that. And now we're going to finalize it. There it is. It's not auto playing. So if I click on this thing here, all of them are on. And by the way, that's how you can, if you want to turn it off, you just do that. And then when you're going through your exhibit, you can just press and it'll just take you through it. You got to hit update to add it in. That's it. It's done. So now let's just go check it out. Let's make sure that it worked. Okay, and I'm going to start this at step 8. So we're on step 8. And there it is. Make sense? So questions. Yeah.
What day are you presenting?
So I've got the sign up sheet. Let's look at that. So next week we'll have like 5 or 6 each day. So you just put your name down here for any of that. And then in the last week, I decided I don't have a speaker for the last day. So I'm going to try something a little different this year. And for those of you who signed up for the first 2 days, that's fine. But everybody else, I want to present on the last day. So just, I guess, I still want you to put your name down here. Make sense? Other questions? Yeah.
Suppose the first group is for the first presentation, the second is for the second.
Yes, and the second map is about something new, something that's going on in the world today. And you'll have time. I wouldn't work on it at all until really when we get to the third week and we've done a little bit in class here. You want to find again, if you want to get ahead of this a little bit, you can go to one of the old projects and go look at what other people did. And by the way, for the new maps, a lot of you will find a website, like somebody found fishing spots. Take a screenshot of it, and then during your presentation, you're actually you're going to talk about it. So, you don't. I got to think about this. I might sort of waive the creating the exhibit story. I need to think about that. But you're going to find a website, most likely. You could find a map and do that. Okay. Other questions? Let's see here. Let's see if I had anything else. Can you pick one of the most, nobody asked, can you pick one of the most important maps to do, for your project? Sure. If you find a map that's in one of the list of the ones that we laid out in that document, sure, if you want to. But again, I would go back to whatever it is you're interested in. Okay. Yeah, I showed you these are all 3 years worth of the screen. You can get to all of it through this website, all the old presentations. Okay. I think let's take the rest of the time that we have and go on to Pixium and look at your map that you did from yesterday and go work on that. Go play with that, right? Go understand how to update, how to add to it. And even better yet, go to an AI tool and learn about that map or thing that you don't have one. I'll get you one. All right. And then our speaker's coming in 7 minutes. And then our speakers till noon. Then today we go longer. We'll finish at like 11:55 and we'll walk over to special collections.
If
you go to groovy.com, you can just
Oh, you don't have the syllabus? Yeah. Yeah, it's in GroupMe. The playground exhibit at 776.
Well, with the create our own exhibit story.
You will have to create your own exhibit.
Exhibit story.
Yeah, so yeah, you could do that right now. Yep. And let's see, how many we got? I think there's some people who haven't loaded something onto Pixium. I need to give you, Josh, and you haven't loaded one on yet. Okay. Tell me if you need help with that.
When I get to this stage, I
Yeah.
think it's supposed to be like an edit.
I don't think you're logged in.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. No idea.
All right, Josh.
Yeah.
Oh, Doug Wong. He had something. Yeah, so Josh, I'm gonna give you octant and sextant. And those images are actually already on Pixium. And you can practice if you want to upload one. Like this is our playground, but that's the one to work on.
I'm not sure if we put law into.
Yeah.
I wasn't signed one of them. I just really.
Oh no, I should have been. Hold on a second.
It says just quick. Oh, sorry.
Like, how do I delete the show?
I gotta add a photo first.
Yeah.
But oh yeah. So I'm the stick man, right?
You're what?
I'm the stick man.
Yeah, okay.
I think I was gonna ask. I'm sure. Was
Yeah.
there like a place where we had a
There is, if you go to the map makers. So if you go, are you on the most important maps document?
no, I was on the other context.
So go to the most important maps and then page 2, and there's a stick map. And if you click through that link, it should take you to the page about the stick map.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks.
And do you want, let me get you, so, so longitude by the Jupiter moons. So this is the French discovery of longitude. And it's in the map makers. Just find the page for you. Okay, it's page 103. Yeah,
I'm doing one on compass.
yeah.
So as far as like the map that I upload, should it be like an anatomy of the compass, or should it just be
It's
like
kind of whatever you
Okay.
whatever you want.
okay,
Yeah.
cool, thank you.
You can search on the most important map document for the word compass.
Let me do that.
Page page 55 has a Portland maps
Let me check.
for which the
Corporate maps. I like the map.
When I go to most important maps, I'm only on
And
the
then-
one that has 30. I guess I got
55 or 59.
Uh-huh. Let me pull that up. Okay. There we go. I see them now. Thank you.
Yeah.
This was super, right? This is like, and then. I tried the good one, I didn't know. Yeah, I have been put like, oh, I didn't say it's like now silver.
All right, so I'm gonna let our speaker in here shortly. Yeah, yeah.
They tried, but I put the one I did yesterday, I think I might have messed up in it, so I don't see Curia at all, just like have any thoughts on it, so.
I'll look at it later and see if I can figure out why. Before we let our guests in, our online guests, Daniel Crouch is dealer in rare books and maps from London. PJ Mode is the guy I told you about who has the persuasive map collection. And he has a granddaughter here at Williams. Yeah. He could be a speaker for sure to our class. I'm really delighted he's gonna be here. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
Hello.
Daniel. All right, hold on a second. I gotta get the sound right. PJ, I see you. Can you hear me? I guess you can hear me. Okay. Hold on, let me get my sound right. I think we're gonna do this. Can you somebody online say something?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Great. One more time, Daniel.
Can you hear me? Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much. Okay. Awesome. Daniel, welcome. I'm sorry it's on me. I'm the one who I don't think gave you the link to begin with, so sorry about that.
I just thought gently remind you.
Hold on, I gotta get the camera into the room here for you. So Elida, welcome. I see you.
Hi, nice to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
What I thought I would do is use my phone. I'm going to reverse the camera and put myself on mute. So while Nick opens the books, I can show you the books with my phone, which I guess is more flexible than a computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just going
Yeah.
to turn and unmute myself.
As I mentioned to you, Tom, we're working off in two different sites today, and so I've actually come home. So you're in my library at home, and the books are not with me, or some of the books are not with me.
Do I
So,
unmute myself?
depending on what I'm talking about, can we highlight me or Elida?
Yeah.
Is that easy
Yeah.
enough done? Or both of
I
us?
think I can. Hold on just a second. So yes is the answer to that. But we'll just have to wait in and make sure. I want to also introduce you and also our other guests on the line. So, okay, here we go. So, we have on the line here, in our class, we've got 15 students in the history of maps class, maps past, present, and future. And on the Zoom, we have Claire Rickard, who has worked with me in San Francisco on Pixium. So she's a student of maps. And then we have PJ Mode. My goodness, nice to see you, PJ. Nice to meet you.
Same here.
PJ, I told the class earlier, has an incredible collection of persuasive maps at Cornell, and also has a granddaughter who is attending Williams. How about that? Okay, so we're delighted to have you, and most delighted to have Daniel here and with us. So Daniel, I met about 8 years ago, and I memorialized that moment when I met him. And I know, Daniel, each year I'm going to keep showing this, and we're going to keep thinking of ourselves as that's how we look. So Daniel majored in philosophy and worked at Bonham's and Bernard Shapiro Rare Books before starting Daniel Crouch Rare Books with his partner Nick 10 years ago. Lives in Oxford. And I think you guys are all going to really enjoy hearing from Daniel. So Daniel, how's that?
Well, apart from the fact that's a 6 years old talk. We started Daniel Crouch Rare Books in 2010, so it's now 16 years ago.
Okay, all right, I'll change that.
No problem at all. So do you want me to start now?
Yes, please. And we've got 35 minutes or so in total, if that works.
Excellent. Well, I'll talk for some of that, and hopefully you'll have some questions, because I know how wonderful and engaged students at university often are in asking questions of speakers. My name is Daniel, and on the other end of the other telephone, we have Nick and Elida, who are going to be our arms and our hands when looking at the books today, because I am 52 miles away from them. And really, I'm going to, if it's okay with you, give you a little bit of a chat about what we do and about the problem of cartography and map making, and then talk to you a little bit about the business of map selling as it exists in 2026, I should say. And so first of all, and I'm sure you've all thought about this before, but a little bit about the problem of cartography. And the problem of cartography is best expressed by an orange, which is that the Earth is spherical, and in order to navigate using a planar map, we have to try and turn a sphere into a flat surface, which is, as most of you will probably know, mathematically impossible. And so all maps are an attempt to solve that problem. And in fact, in 2011, Google Maps proudly announced that they had solved the problem, and Google Maps, for a very short period of time, ceased to use a projection of the world and started to use an actual view from above converted into a map for their maps. And everyone found it very difficult to look at, and nobody liked it, and they went back to Mercator's projection. And when I say projection of the world, and this is why an orange is best expressed, is that in order to solve the unwrapping of that orange, one way of looking at it is to say, how can I shine light on that in a particular way so that I'm going to see a point on one side of the orange onto a flat plane on the other. And the peeling of the orange is a tricky one, and because of course we don't want to actually have to measure every single point on Earth in relation to itself on Earth. And early astronomers, really starting with the Greeks, realized that the most efficient way of determining the distance between 2 points on Earth is to look up. And they developed an instrument, which I happen to have one here, called an astrolabe. And that's from the Greek astra for star, and the word take. And the idea is a star taker. And this is basically two maps of the celestial hemisphere. And when I say the celestial hemisphere, I mean if you imagine another sphere going around the sphere of the globe, and we're on the inside of it looking up, it is the way that the stars would be projected and seen on that sphere above us in the sky. And so there are two on an astrolabe, and each astrolabe is specific for a particular place. Well, rather, there are two types of astrolabe. One, the so-called navigational astrolabe, which is if you know what the stars are doing and you know what time it is, it'll tell you where you are. But that's the rarer of the two. The more common one is if you know where you are and you know what the stars are doing, it'll tell you what time it is. So the main use of an astrolabe is as a nighttime clock. But once you know that sort of thing, you can find out all sorts of other useful things like prayer times, times for sunset, sunrise, times for Easter, times for when particular celestial bodies will be in the sky, times for solar eclipses. So really, the sort of rhythm of life can be determined for an astrolabe. In fact, there are over 2,000 uses of an astrolabe for calculating different things. And what it really is it's two maps of the stars, one underneath for a place, which shows you a fixed set idealized for that place. And then the other one is what they're looking like tonight. And so what you do is you find a star that you knew where it was in the sky, starting with usually the pole star. You hold this up and you use this thing here, which is called an alidad, to sight that star, read off there the altitude of the star in the night sky, using the back of an astrolabe to calculate using time and the time of year and the date, and that then you can refer to a series of tables, and that will tell you the time it is for that date with that star in that place. It's a very complicated, slow way of finding out the time, but in the middle of the night in the 2nd century, that was the only way you had to do it. But once you've done this sort of navigation, once you've done this sort of calculation, you can use the positions of the stars as known according to the tables to calculate the relative difference of places. Now, there's one complication, which is when these astrolabes were developed, people thought that the Earth was the center of the universe. As a result, they only last for about 18 years and they get out of date. And in fact, I suspect you think that the sun is the center of the universe, which is also equally incorrect. And really, it's the stars in position relative to each other. And that leads us on to what we do for a living. And so I always say to people that Nick and I answer one of two questions. Where are we, or what time is it? And if you're very clever and you've worked out that actually we're now talking about positions relative to the stars, you'll realize that's essentially the same question. And that all of the maps, and all, whether it's maps of the stars or the maps of the planets, are answering us, where are we? Where in the world are we? And so I'm now going to just show you a few books, and I think you're going to look at a couple of these books in the next few days in your library. I'd like to think we have slightly better examples. These are some of the very earliest attempts to answer that question and to answer how to unfold the orange onto the page. And the man who's most associated with this is, and Nick's opening the wrong book, first of all. The man first associated with this is a Claudius Ptolemaeus, who was a Greek living in Alexandria. So he was an Egyptian Greek in the 2nd century and working with the great library of Alexander the Great in Alexandria. And he came up with 3 different ways of peeling the orange, 3 different projections. And I'm going to show you the first one is in the 1490 Ptolemy. It's actually the very first printed atlas, by the way, was 1477. The first printed map precedes that by a couple of years. The first printed atlas in 1477 was based on a series of tables that Claudius Ptolemaeus recorded, which are basically relative distances and coordinates for places on a grid. And he came up with three different projections. And this, what we're looking at now, is his first projection. And this is Ptolemy's first projection. And the word map, we come from, is actually Greek for cloak. And that's because the idea of a cloak wrapping your orange, you can imagine, and you can see the shape of that first projection, the first mapper there. If you imagine the bit that's now appearing on the right on the screen is the top of the map for the north, and that would be the neck of the cloak. And then going down on the left-hand side of your screen at the moment, you'll see that's not quite Southern Africa. That's the bottom of Africa, but Africa hadn't been rounded when this set of coordinates was devised. And so it shows an inland sea for the Indian Ocean. Nick, can you just point at the Indian Ocean? That's Sri Lanka he's pointing at there, and that's the Indian Ocean bound on the sides. And so this is his first projection, which is a sort of a conical projection. Now, he understands. Do you want to just rotate it around on your phone, Elida, so we can look at it?
Yeah, let's try that.
That's a bit more straightforward. So that's north at the top now. And then do you want to go zoom right in on the Arabian Peninsula so people can see something we recognize? So that there is the Arabian Peninsula in the middle of the map. And if you point to the Red Sea, and then north of that, the Mediterranean, going there, and then that landmass to the left of that finger there is Africa, but I'm not going down all the way to South Africa because they haven't gone around the Horn yet until Vasco da Gama heads off to India and Bartolomé Diaz. And so that is Ptolemy's first projection on this kind of conical form. And that is unwrapping the orange, realizing, of course, that people never thought the Earth was flat. Anyone who thinks that in the second century Alexandria that the Earth was flat is very much mistaken. And even when this atlas was made in 1490, it was well known that if you go, anyone who's ever been on a boat at sea or up a mountain realizes there's a curved Earth. Really, the flat Earth theory was a bunch of lunatics, mostly, I'm afraid to say, in your country, in the 18th century. Really, the notion of the curved Earth was very well known. So when that projection was made, it was realized that it wasn't covering the whole planet, but the whole planet was unknown to the geographers at the time. And then we're going to have a look at another solution to the same problem. And so this one is from a few years earlier than that atlas, but actually that map in that atlas was first done in 1478. We're now going to look at 1482. And this is arguably the most beautiful atlas ever made, and certainly one of my favorites. The number of firsts in this book is quite astonishing. You see this copy here, by the way, it's got a oak wooden board. And Nick, could you go to the and there's a bit of a venison, bit of deer skin holding that together. Nick, could you go to the title page, the illuminated title? I don't know how well you're going to do this on your phone, but there is a picture of the translator of Ptolemy's, one of the translators of Ptolemy's text, a man called Nicholas Germanus, giving the book to the Pope just before its publication. And there he is. And if you see, that's a rather beautifully done. This is Paulus VI, I think. Paul II he's giving it to. And the book is in the foreground. Just point at the book there. And that is a copy of the manuscript of the Atlas. And that's illuminated in gold. That's the true title for the book. But the book was originally done long before this edition, which is 1482. So what this is a different version of the text that survives from the Greek times. And Nick, if you just turn to the world map. And this is a super cool world map. This map's a whole lot of firsts. So you can see it's related to the other one, but this time, the last one was a sort of cone. This is curved meridians and curved parallels. So you've got more of a lozenge shape to the map. And at the very north there, can you show the Mediterranean and Arabia again so we can see Arabia? And that's the Mediterranean, that's Arabia, and that's Mediterranean. And then north of that, you've got, breaking out of the former map, Scandinavia. So they're breaking this sort of lozenge-shaped projection because real-world geography is now intervening in the coordinates that Ptolemy left behind. And I just want to show you show us the wind head there. So it's a north wind we can see in that image, blowing cold air onto the map. And right at the top, if you zoom right in, one of the features about this map that I love is it's the first map to be signed by a map maker, the first map ever. It's done by a man called Johannes Schnitzer, or John the Woodcutter, as his name is, and indeed it is the first woodcut atlas. And this is from 1482. The color is hand colored, and that color is made with a lapis azurite, which is like lapis lazuli but ground down. And lapis lazuli comes from Afghanistan. This is actually from the north of Italy, south of France, blue stone, and it's this gorgeous blue, and it really makes the atlas very beautiful. And it's so gorgeous, and it was so expensive at the time that the man who made this atlas, sadly, went spectacularly bust. And so much so that it's actually really quite rare. This is a very, very rare example, and it's a contemporary binding. And the map itself, if you just go zoom in on one of these other wind heads again, it's really very decoratively put together. And there you go, look at that. Nice chubby cheek cherub. And this second projection is curved to try and show more of the curvature of the Earth. And it's based on a series of coordinates. Now, Nick, if you go back and show that the beginning of the book comprises loads of tables of place names. And these place names all then have two sets of numbers after them to be plotted on that grid of that world map. And the detailed areas of these are then expressed in a series of 26 other maps. In fact, 27 in this atlas because of Scandinavia. Nick, can you just show us one of the ancient world maps? One of the other places?
Daniel, all of this was created in the 2nd century.
Well, the coordinates were created in the 2nd century. The maps were made in 1482. So the coordinates were done by Claudius Ptolemaeus using his astrolabe, based on the known places in what was in the ancient world at the time. But those numbers survive. There's no evidence at all that old Claude ever made a map himself. In fact, no maps survive, no Roman maps survive at all, except for really a couple of sort of shadows on shields and things like that. But that Nick's now showing you a map of the British Isles. And you can see at the top there, Scotland bending over to the right. What a lot of you don't probably realise is that Scotland actually bends very much to the left. So much so that, in fact, Edinburgh is to the west of Bristol, which you don't see because on the projections we look at today, usually Mercator's projection also bends them Scotland a little bit. Anyway, this is the result of Ptolemy's second projection. He still wasn't happy with that. So he's got his first projection is the map, the cone. His second one has got the curved meridians. It's more roundy globy, but not roundy globy enough. And he's still struggling. How am I going to do this? Peel this orange. And so another way of dealing with this is to make the cone a little bit broader. You've got to fit in more of these geographical discoveries. So then in 1511, the first color printed atlas by a man called Sylvanus was made, and he came up with a really lovely, much more romantic and very sort of artistic idea of how we're going to solve this problem. And so he projected the world as a heart, a so-called cordiform map. You just zoom to try and give us some sense of where the heart is. Can you just trace the outline of the heart for us? And there you see a couple of things have appeared on this map. On the left-hand side, there's this funny new continent. And you'll see on the bottom, there is the land discovered by Amerigo Vespucci, South America. And to the north of that, a couple of little islands discovered by a man called Christopher Columbus. That's Hispaniola and Cuba. You just point at those. And you'll notice that if you could just zoom in on Cuba, rather confusingly, it also includes Cape Cod. It's on the far left-hand side, and that's because there was some knowledge of Portuguese discoveries that had happened at that point. But what you'll also notice is there is no North America. No one had set foot there by 1511, and so the North America is absent from the map altogether. And then on the other side of the world, this is another reason why this map's really quite fun, is you've got the island of Zimpangu, Japan, and it's the first appearance of Japan on any map. If you just point to Zimpangu, no, north of that, way north of that, way north. No, up. There you go. Up. There you go. That's Zimbabwe. There is Japan. And that's the first time it appears. You can see the little wind heads blowing again. And this map is printed in black and red, and it's the first attempt at color printing. And so you see, we've now got another different way of unwrapping that orange. And one of the reasons this map would have appeared is also the first atlas printed in Venice. I have to say that because Elida, who's holding the camera, is from Venice. And it, the other reason this is rather romantic is, of course, the movement. Those of you who are history students in the room, the humanist movement obviously was centering intellectual achievement more towards man and the soul than towards divine intervention. And so the feeling of the human heart was one of the things that was really generating the motivation behind some of these quarterform or heart-shaped projections, was to make knowledge more close to man than it is to God, which is interesting because, like, philosophically, looking at a world from outside, it's very much a sort of God's eye view on the world. And then moving on from this, the map makers were then still trying to struggle to shoehorn in this ancient geography from the 2nd century into the modern discoveries of the Age of Discovery. So you've got Amerigo Vespucci, you've got Bartolomé Diaz, Vasco da Gama, Christopher Columbus. All of these voyages are suddenly breaking apart the different projections of the world, where the world was seeing on these maps, until we get to 1513, where we have this extraordinarily famous map, and this is known as this is the first map of the New World, and it's on this one in particular. The name America does not appear, but the man who made this map, Martin Waldseemüller, working in Saint-Dié in what's Alsace-Lorraine, nowadays France. He was working together with some other intellectuals for the richest man in the world. The Elon Musk of the 16th century was a guy called Duke René of Lorraine. And he paid for all these clever guys to work in a monastery on the latest information. Unfortunately, Alsace-Lorraine is a long way away from the Spain and Portugal when Christopher Columbus got back. So much so that news of Columbus's voyages reached Saint-Dié later than the news of Amerigo Vespucci's voyages. And I don't know if you guys have covered this. Please stop me if you have.
No, go ahead.
The reason Donald Trump thinks he can call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America is because your entire continent, or both continents, are misnamed after the person who didn't discover them. But because poor old Martin Waldseemüller, working in Saint-Dié, gets a letter saying Amerigo Vespucci has found a new land, and he decides to name this new land, like all the other continents, America, Europa, Africa, after a female figure. Unfortunately, Amerigo has a male name, and so he renames it after a so-called female Amerigo and calls this new continent America. And that, on the Library of Congress, has a map by Waldseemüller, which I wholeheartedly recommend you go and see. A, because it's beautiful, and B, because the birth certificate of the Americas, and it has the name America on it for the first time. And that was produced in 1507, 1508. But this map you're looking at here was by the same guy in 1513, and conspicuously, he has removed any mention of America that he had on his other map because he's realized his mistake and he realized Columbus got there first. And there's another map by him which we actually have, and I forgot to ask Nick to get out. But we have another map by Waldseemüller, which is the first map of the New World. And on it, he very conspicuously says these lands were discovered and invented by Christopher Columbus under the mandate and auspices of the King and Queen of Castile. And that's when he's acknowledging his original mistake of calling this country America. But it doesn't matter because he'd already published it. It's too late. It's the first bit of fake news to hit the Americas. And lo and behold, there's another version of this done in 1535 and 1545, which Nick should have in front of him somewhere. And if you go to the map of the New World in that, he may take a little while to find it, so I'm going to distract you while he's doing this. You'll see that in the map of the New World in the later editions, which are actually copies of the Atlas of 1513, the word America suddenly appears. There you go. Should be on the one before that. There it is. It's on that one. It's on that one. The word America appears. Can we zoom right in? And so the fake news stuck. And that is how you ended up being called America. And I don't know if you guys knew that. So what happens to our problem of cartography? Nick, did you flag up all three projections in the 1482? If so, can you find the third projection, the spherical one? Um, an alternative way of looking at the world, in order to solve our problem of cartography, is to view it stereographically. So you're actually looking at the whole circle, and you're just going to see one side of it, and you can ignore the other side, and then you can show the other side on a different image. And that was Ptolemy's third projection, which was first made famous by the artist Albrecht Dürer. And I'm sure you've all heard of him, and I rather suspect that's the first projection. That's a segment. That's the second projection, whereby we get our slightly curved surface of the world. And the third projection is further on, I think. You may struggle a bit to find that one. You might find it easier in the 45. It's a much bigger. It's a whole right-hand page in the 45. And so the three different attempts to solve the problem of cartography. Now, all three of these suffered from one major defect, which is that if you're trying to sail using any of them, they're completely useless. And that's because to sail over the surface of the Earth, you are going across a curved surface, a tangent, whereas if you're going on a straight line, it's a tangent to that, is the closest you can get. And in order to solve this problem, it needed another 80 something years to pass. And a man who did that was a man called Gerard Mercator. And Mercator's projection, basically, which is the one we're all familiar with looking at today, which is the one that stretches. Oh, here we go. So that's the stereographic projection on the left. Rather beautifully done. So you can see how the celestial hemisphere, which is on the outside of the armillary, with the Earth in the middle, and you just seeing one side of the orange. And it wasn't until Mercator stretched at the poles to make Greenland very big, which may account for why certain people think Greenland's very important at the moment. In order to solve the problem whereby the straight line on the curved surface of the Earth, the shortest distance over the curved surface of the Earth is represented by a straight line on a flat map. Mercator probably died, having only made a couple of these, and it took another 10 years before an English mathematician called Edmund Wright cracked the mathematics behind this. And Mercator's projection was revolutionary because it enabled suddenly sailors to navigate by going, hang on, I can get over this curved Earth by plotting a straight line on this map. And that will get me the shortest distance between 2 points, and I'll be able to navigate accurately. And using that, suddenly, all sorts of things happen. And it's no accident that within 10 years of Mercator publishing his projection, you suddenly have, well, within 20 years of him projection, you suddenly have the first modern atlas, you have the Dutch East India Company, the English East India Company, trade between the Spice Islands, the rounding of the Horn of Africa enables maritime trade between the Far East and Europe. And you get the birth of the joint stock company, the stock market, capital investment, and modern capitalism as we know it. And so really, and so much so, it's well worth knowing, those of you that visit New York, that this was the importance of the Spice Islands and these journeys to the east was such that the British managed to convince the Dutch to swap Manhattan for the island of Curacao in the Dutch West Indies and the islands of Banda and Run for their nutmeg production in what is now Indonesia. So there's one of the worst trade deals of all time.
Hey, Daniel.
Yes.
How do Portland maps compare and contrast to the Mercator projection?
Okay, so have you guys covered Portland maps?
A little bit.
So Portland maps are very different. There are two schools of geography basically before early modern Europe, before 1475, 1477. Printing was invented in 1455. Well, printing was invented before that. Movable type hit Europe in 1455 with the Gutenberg Bible, which then enabled this amazing first information revolution and the spread of knowledge and information. And the maps that were being made at the time that we're looking at here, this is early modern Europe, are coming from mostly classical sources. So I've been talking about ancient Greeks working in Egypt who are making measurements based on the planets. Parallel with the development of that over the next 1500 years, there is a much more practical tradition of so-called Portolan maps. And these had Portuguese in origin, but they're throughout the Mediterranean. And these are maps that are based on dead reckoning between two places that are known. And they tend to based on information description of the coast. And sailors, until they really were able to navigate better, would generally stick within sight of land. It was much safer that way. And so these maps, these Portland maps, were done on dead reckoning and based on coastal profiles and coastal information, and mostly confined to the Mediterranean originally. Now,
So not compass bearing maps.
well, the compass was around. It was particularly inaccurate, and you start to see the influence on compasses on Portland maps in this very period.
Okay, thank you.
But please understand at this point the notion of north being at the top of the map does not come around until the 18th century. The word orientation means to face east. All early maps, whether they were Ptolemaic or Portland, tended to think more towards the east first before they started to look north. And it was really with the development of more accurate compasses plus more accurate mapping of the Earth that the compass navigation starts to come in, and putting north towards the top of the map comes in slowly from the 16th century onwards. There is a Portland map that Nick has managed to muster up. So this is drawn a goat skin. If you can imagine the neck of the goat at the top of the map and the legs sticking out the sides. And that is a map of the Mediterranean. So we're at the top of the map there is the Straits of Gibraltar. If you can zoom right in and show us the coast of Italy, it's probably the best thing. Oh, you've got it on screen. Can you click? Yeah, there we go. That's Sicily we're looking at in the middle of the map there, and then there's Italy on the right. So the center of the map is Sicily. This is, I will not surprise you to know that this map was made in Sicily. So it made Sicily the center of the Earth. And so these Portland maps are based on, and you can see that the characteristic lines across these maps, they're called rum lines. By the time this is a 17th century Portland we're looking at here. By the time that was made in, I think, 1642, the rum lines had taken on really a stylistic purpose. But originally, those lines would have been drawn on to navigate between two places along the coast, and they would be to help the sailor do a dead reckoning to work out an angle of attack to get between A and B. And then they became to symbolize a sea chart, and so the rum lines then become symbolic of a sea chart, and you see them all sea charts thereafter. And then, so this tradition bumps into the classical tradition in the middle of the 15th century. And you start to see maps that deploy the accurate place names and information from the Portland together with the more mathematically correct projections of how to get the spherical Earth on there. And then add compass navigation to that and the astrolabe, and you start to get some chance of getting your crew back alive from a ship that leaves the sight of land. It's worth noting, by the way, gives you some idea of how miserable life must have been in early modern Europe, that a ship leaving for the East Indies, the crew on it had a 30% chance of survival coming back.
Wow.
It's pretty grim odds if you're heading off. But people did it because the chances of enormous wealth were so great. So really, that covers sort of early modern solutions to the problem of cartography and what it is and why it is we sell what we sell. And I've taken us to Mercator's projection, and it's some idea of the enduring power of Mercator's projection that he has. His projection survives even on most maps that we look at today. When you see, I don't know if any of you ever watched the BBC News, but the BBC map that appears on BBC News is a Mercator's projection, which shows a mathematically very inaccurate Earth in terms of space and where it sits. And I'm sure PJ is going to talk to us about some of the tricks you can play in order to represent different bits of the Earth to make a political and a moral point. Nick was just showing us there the Teixeira map, which is on a screen, which well worth mentioning this because this is on Mercator's projection. This map, which is unfortunately currently somewhere between Australia and the UK, rather than hanging on the wall of my shop because they dropped it. And this is a map that was made. It's enormous. It's 4 meters wide nearly, and that was a map that's made to show all the different routes between Asia and Europe to get your spices back. It's really a big advertisement for the early modern capitalist trade of spices between Indonesia and Europe. So really, I've now, talked about some of the things that we do as a business and the sort of maps that we sell. And I'm going to stop short of going on to further into the sort of modern history of cartography. But having left Italy in the 15th century, the center of cartography with that 1482 Ptolemy moves north with the Renaissance into Northern Europe and the new economic powerhouses of the Netherlands and England. Um, and really then talk to you a bit about, I suppose, how I ended up doing this and what it is that we do for a living. To say it's a niche profession would be an understatement. There are about 20 rare map dealers on Earth, and we are in a part of that market that deals in, the very, very rarest and the earliest of the maps. Really not quite a monopoly, but near enough one. Dealing in, the very origin story of the history of cartography. And Nick and I started doing this as a niche business, working for a bigger bookseller than us, Bernard Shapiro, from the early 2000s through to 2010, probably before any of you lot were born. And we started our own business in 2010, very much focused on this period and very much focused on the history of cartography only. And we did that partly because it's fun and that's what we knew about. And partly because, maps are cool and they're becoming more and more important in our lives. And we encounter cartography much more now than we would have done 30, 40, 50 years ago. When you think about just going out for dinner of an evening or getting into an Uber or looking at wars in Venezuela or Ukraine, you encounter cartography much, much more than my generation or the one before me. And when you think about how we're looking at the world now and spatial relationships between things, and even the internet is very much based on access to bits of geography. And we look at the main issues that we face of migration and climate change. Cartography is extraordinarily important, so it's a really timely business to be in. It's quite fun to study the history of it. But actually, I got into it without any of that kind of philosophical background to it. I got a job as a Saturday boy when I was at school looking for some beer money from a job centre. And so forget whatever qualifications you get. It's just sheer dumb luck. And getting a job from a job centre can influence these things. But I won't witter on any more. I've probably prattled on for how am I over time? Far too long
You're
already.
good for time. We got 5 minutes.
Excellent. Then in which case, I wonder if I can coax any of you into asking me an intelligent question.
I have a question for Daniel.
Sure.
May I ask?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for presenting. That was fascinating. The question I had was, do you have any stories about going to great lengths to acquire a map, or maybe from buying from an eccentric dealer or going across the world to get one?
I have so many of them; it would take a lifetime, to tell you all. Also, I'm very conscious this is being recorded, and law enforcement. um, I'm trying to think. Elida, help me here. What's the best one that's publishable? She's on mute. Oh, she's disappeared now. No, she's not going to join us.
Art, tell them an art story.
So, well, let me have a think. There's quite a good one. Can I tell you this one? I think I probably can tell you this one. Quite a good one was actually, I'll tell you, a story came up to me today when I was talking to some colleagues. It's actually not about a map, but it's about I was looking at an article in a Sunday color supplement. And in the background of it was a book dealer who was being interviewed, a man called John Hart. And in the background of his profile photograph of him, was a series of red Morocco, what I thought were atlases stretching off into the distance, multi-volumes, 72 of them, in fact. And so I phoned him up. I said, John, what on earth is that magnificent atlas behind you? And he goes, oh, no, that's not an atlas. These are my Albertina boxes. And I said, oh, what are they? He said, well, in 1981, the Albertina Museum in Vienna was throwing out its print boxes. And I intervened and took them all. And I've kept them here for years. And
I have one. I've got one to show.
Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, sure. Grab one. And I said, "Can I buy them?" And he said, "Absolutely not. I love them. They're what I keep as my background in my shop." I said, "Damn." Anyway, fortunately for me, he died a couple of years later. Um, and the question is, was I craven enough to do anything about this fact? And the answer is yes, I was. And I found out about who his heirs were. And that's one of the boxes. There's 72 of these damn things. They're
Oh my
quite
gosh.
Holy. They are really beautiful. And I made an offer, and his heirs turned that down and put them into auction. I bought them for half my offer in auction. And then the last laugh is on me because I've done nothing with them for the last 7 years, and we're now paying enormous storage on them. But we've just taken on a collection of 9,000 prints, which is why I'm not in the shop today. And finally, we are going to use those 72 Albertina boxes to store this collection of 9,000 prints. And so that's just a little one that occurred to me because it came up today. But I mean, I've had there is another great one, which again, it's not a map story, but this is one of my favorites just because it'll go in my memoirs of a set of Ferber, who was a gardener in Kensington in London, and he did a set of 12 fruits and 12 flowers, beautiful 18th century engravings. And they're arranged. They're basically it's all the stock that he would sell. There were seeds of fruits and seeds of flowers. And he had one of the great artists from the Netherlands, a guy called Casteels, paint these things, and then they had them engraved on copper. And there were 12 of them, one for each month of the year, and it was for the flowers that flower in that month of the year and the fruits that ripen in that month of the year. And they became calendars. And a friend of mine, called Andrew Edmonds, whose collection it is we were going to be putting in these boxes, bought a Ferber flower for June in an original pearwood frame. Got it back, it was a bit grubby, so unclipped the back of the frame, and the other 11 months fell out the back.
Oh wow.
That's quite a fun story. But if any of you want to come to New York for the winter show at the Armory from the 23rd of January to I think the 2nd of February this year, we'll be exhibiting where we'll have some of the best revolutionary maps of for the 250th anniversary of America and the 400th anniversary of New York. We'll have some Revolutionary War maps of New York. And we will also have one of the world's largest collection of pop-up books that we're selling. We'll have a collection of 7,000 pop-up books, which will be there. And if you come there, then I will tell you some stories when I'm not being recorded.
So we're going to, sadly, we're going to New York this Friday this year, but they may be in town. I want to, and I'm just going to see if there are other questions here. So we may be a couple minutes late. We've got to walk 20 steps to get to.
Totally fine, Tom. I've just been setting up this whole time and loving Daniel's stories and learning from them. Thank you so much. How are you? Doing really well, thanks.
Good.
PJ, do you have a question or anything you want to say in all of this? I'm really glad you joined.
I just want to say that if you ask Daniel to tell stories about his acquisitions, do it when you have plenty of time. Daniel, you might tell a story about the Menards, how you got the Menard set.
Well, yes, that's rather good. So Charles Minard is one of the great figures of the history of cartography. He was the first person really to do proper statistical maps. He was a great data visionary. If you want to read a book by a man called Edward Tufte on data visualization, this is like a hot topic for anyone working in the IT space. Data visualization is everything these days when we look at computers and IT. And he came up with some amazing maps. The most famous of all was a map that had 7 different variables on it. And it was a map showing Napoleon's advance and failure to take Russia and Moscow over the winter of 1810, 1812. His map was a real data visualization treat to get 7 variables on one map. There are only, I believe, 2 known surviving examples of this map, and I have the enormous pleasure of having had Minard's own archive one that belonged to an eccentric and really rather, sadly dead now, really rather fun French dealer. and I had to pursue Minard's archive through him over a period of many, many years, and I had to drink many bottles of red wine and take him out for lots of very long lunches and sit through him abusing his wife and smoking Gaulois Leger before I could buy it. But that was a real treat, and that took. I mean, so I think the longest I've ever worked on a map actually wasn't that one. The longest I've ever worked on the map was the Maggiolo map that currently sits in the Louvre Abu Dhabi and is famously the one of the most expensive maps, if not the most expensive map ever sold. And that involved a 7-year pursuit through 3 continents of its owner. The map was actually under a bed in the UK all this time, but I had to buy many dinners for that one, and we ended up sitting opposite each other over a dinner. And I said, look, let me write a number down on an envelope on the back of a bit of paper, and you write a number down. And if my number's above yours or the same as yours, then you'll let me sell the map. And we both wrote a number down on a bit of paper, and the 2 numbers were exactly the same. So it's $10 million was the answer.
Wow. Did you have a buyer?
Not then, no. We did shortly. The Louvre Abu Dhabi bought it in the end, and you can go and see it's a magnificent map about which I could tell many stories as well.
What's it called again?
Daniel, what's the name of the map?
The Maggiolo map. If you Google my name and Maggiolo, Maggiolo, you'll find out the whole story. Bloomberg did a Teddy piece on it as well, so you can watch that.
Daniel, I'm compiling a list. This year in this class, I've decided I'm going to try to expose them to the most important maps. And so I've got a list I'm building. I'm pretty sure that's on it. The Menard is on it. I don't know if the corniform map that you showed today is on it, but
no. I was going to plug a book that I contributed to called Map, published by Phaidon, which has PG. I think you contributed that as well, didn't you?
Yes.
Did you not? Yeah. But it's basically my fantasy map list. A lot of the maps on there. I mean, that's more than the sort of top 10 maps. But that if you want a précis of some of the most interesting maps that have been made from bits of there we go, bits of cuneiform tablets going right the way through to Google Maps.
This one. Can you see my picture? Is that
That's the one.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Other questions from anyone? Yeah. Yep.
I was gonna ask, like, what are the steps that need to be taken to maintain the even just some of the books that you showed us today that you have in your library, or even some maybe more delicate maps or pieces that you have?
Sure. So the first thing I'd say is don't give them to a book dealer. Right. I mean, if we've had a book for a long time, you can. I hate to say this, but it's true, right? You can really see the wear and tear on it, because books are best kept on a library shelf. The ideal environment for a book is basically an Oxford College library. You want 55% humidity. You want nice big thick walls. You want the temperature around about between 15 and 18 degrees centigrade, and you want me nowhere near it, because what damages books are people. And you'll notice that Nick wasn't wearing white gloves there, and that's because he wanted us to see his delicate manicure. But it's also because we don't wear white gloves because clumsiness is the book's enemy.
That's why I'm not swearing.
So really, you want to keep your hands off books. If you do touch them, you want to have clean hands, and you want to be very, very careful. Books are best, large books, especially atlases, are actually best kept stored horizontally, so gravity has less effect on them. If you see a book, especially a vellum book that's been on the shelf for a long time, it'll start to sag towards the bottom. But really, humidity, the main enemy of any book is humankind. After that, worms and flies. And then damp, water. Fire, unbelievably, is very rarely a problem. My insurer tells me there's never been a catastrophic fire in an antiquarian bookshop in the whole history of insurance. We are literally the safest business to insure. But yeah, water is really bad news, and as is fungus and fungal spores. And another reason not to wear gloves is your hands have natural oils on them that tend to kill some of the fungal spores, whereas gloves will transfer them from book to book.
All right, Daniel, thank you very, very much. This was wonderful.
Pleasure, as always. Hopefully, some of you can make it to New York, even if you're not going there for your trip this year.
Awesome. Okay, Daniel, thank you again for accommodating.
Thank you. Enjoy looking at the books with Anne. Take care.
PJ, nice to meet you.
See you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye, Elida.